Local police in Tenerife have released footage of the mountainous area where Jay's dead body was found. It appears to have been discovered by a professional climber who is wearing proper rock climbing footwear. They almost look like ballet shoes as well as a helmet. The terrain where he was found is not only overgrown and dense, but steep and sheer. Anyone who clambered here without a full quota of sleep, the wrong footwear, and no idea where he was or what he was doing would likely fall. Can you see that? And so, given the terrain, a fall does seem the most likely scenario. Also, from what we can see from the footage, it does look like Jay was heading through the Muska Gorge to the sea, which was the original theory presented on this channel.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, on day 29, after 4 weeks and 1 day, basically one morning, beyond the 4-week milestone mark, human remains have been discovered, and that then raises 7 serious questions. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you've found this analysis worthwhile, coherent, think about this analysis before we knew the outcome, and now that we do know the outcome, if you found it worthwhile, interesting, intelligent, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So we're going to deal with 7 serious questions that arise at this point. Number 1, is it Jay Slater? Now, according to what we know, Tenerife's local mountain rescue and intervention group located, in their words, the lifeless body of a young man. So the fact that it's a young man, the fact that it's a male, well, and it's in the Muska area of Tenerife, it does seem to be Jay. They didn't name Jay Slater directly, but it does show the caution law enforcement undertake, in terms of jumping to conclusions. Nevertheless, they also added, all the evidence suggests, with full identification still pending, that this is the young British man who disappeared on 17 June. Yes, this does make sense, and we'll go into why in a moment. The second question that comes up is, how did he die? Now, apparently the initial evidence shows that he could have suffered an accident or fall in the inaccessible zone where he was found. Now, I think how they draw this inference is firstly the area where he's found, and then I also think it's the state of his body. So I don't think he died necessarily of exposure, or certainly a precipitating factor was perhaps blunt force trauma. Perhaps he was immobilized after he fell. So on the one hand, he could have fallen, been immobilized, and then is unable to get himself out of the area where he was. Could also be such a serious fall that he perhaps died on impact. But if he didn't, then he couldn't get out of the area, and then exposure and even starvation could have been a factor. In any event, not a pretty horrible situation that this young kid got himself into. Then number 3, who found him? Now, police added that teams have actually been searching constantly for 29 days and did so discreetly. So they didn't make a lot of fanfare about it. I know there was a TikToker who said he was disgusted by how the police were doing PR exercises. Well, actually, this is how they found him, by searching discreetly in the background. They also said they were looking in their words, a natural space, which was not filled with onlookers. So they were basically searching for him off the beaten track. And that makes sense, to look for him where no one else is looking for him, because where other people were looking for him, they couldn't find him. So look for him somewhere where there aren't onlookers. Those who found him did so apparently just before the Dutch team arrived on the scene. I do wonder whether the Dutch team would have found Jay, because they seem to be a sort of canine-based team, and I think what you needed was a rock climbing specialist. So I don't know whether there were rock climbing specialists amongst that Dutch team. Kudos, though, to the local authorities who were repeatedly lambasted for not putting in enough effort or not being up to the task, and the British would have been better, etc., etc. Well, it's likely the police called off the search perhaps to discourage looky-loos. And basically, they said they'd abandoned the search, but meanwhile, they actually carried on quietly in the background. They were probably wanting this high-profile case to be less high-profile, and that's why they took the route that they did. They didn't want TikTokers and the like streaming into the area, overrunning the area, and perhaps getting themselves into trouble. And that brings us to number 4, what evidence was found? Now, it's not clear yet whether the remains are of the 19-year-old, as formal identification is yet to take place. Probably by tomorrow, that formal identification will be completed and we'll know officially. But police say all evidence suggests it's him. So what evidence are they talking about? Now, I've come across 2 different reports. One says the missing persons charity LBT Global said the remains were found close to the clothes and possessions of the 19-year-old. And this suggests that his remains and his clothing were separate. I don't know whether that's just clumsy language. It is possible that over 4 weeks, wind and wild animals may have separated limbs from the relatively fragile fabric that is a cotton t-shirt. You must remember the wind's blowing. On the other hand, if he fell really badly, it's possible he fell and tore his shirt right off, as he fell against rugged terrain on the way down. Nora Corrin, who went missing in the jungles of Malaysia, was found naked as well. So although that may be the case, I don't know if that is the case. Another report says the remains were found along with Jay Slater's clothes and possessions, and that seems to suggest they were found together. And then they also say close to his mobile phone's last known location. Now, close, how close? That also brings up a really interesting question. Was his mobile phone found? And perhaps that's what they're still looking for. We know that his clothes and possessions were found. Possessions may include his cell phone and perhaps other things like a bag. He was carrying like a day pack or a backpack. Maybe he had a watch with him or a wallet or some combination of these. Number 6, what is his exact location? Well, how far was he found from the last ping or from the beach for that matter? In fact, right now, we don't know. We don't know what his exact location is. And despite some publications claiming to know the precise location, including in their headlines, that turns out to be clickbait. We do know that the civil guard has not said where exactly the body was found or even when the body was found. We sort of seem to get the idea that it was found this morning, on the morning of the 29th. But the exact location hasn't been identified either. And I think this is done deliberately so that the investigators can comb through the tricky area, basically preserve it as if it were a crime scene. I don't think it's because they think it's a crime scene. I think it's in order to definitively rule it out. So they want to go through it, see if there's any evidence, and put it all together. Incident scene footage has been provided, but this gives one a general idea of the area. And of course, the general area is where we said it would be, near Muscat. And that brings us to the 7th and final aspect. Will they do toxicology? And I think this is a very important and crucial question. Were drugs found in his system? What drugs were in his system at the time? Because as far as I'm concerned, he seemed way overconfident in terms of what he was doing, not taking the bus back, not turning back to go to Muscat when he was lost, not turning and going back the way he'd come, not just waiting for perhaps Lucy to come and pick him up, not taking up Kasim on his offer just to drive him back the way he'd come. He seemed really overconfident that he could just find his way back. That he was overconfident in terms of where he was and what he was trying to do. Was that all to do with youth, or was it also to do perhaps with drugs? And so that certainly is an interesting question. So in the next analysis, we'll look at why did it take so long to find Jay? And so we'll deal with that in the next analysis. So that's all for now from Cape Town. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.